Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So we're on page number 73. All right, in the five elements chapter, the second element, writing. So this is about writing. The people of the past were writers. Because how do we know that the people of the past were writers? Because they didn't have books published, man. They didn't have printing presses. You wanted like this book from this person? You had to borrow the book and do what? You had to write it. Yeah, that's it. That's the only way that you're going to get a copy of the book. Or if you had a lot of money, you paid somebody to write it for you. But then you kind of scared because you got to trust somebody else to write it for you. Maybe, So even at that point, most of the people, they won't even trust the person, because especially with knowledge. So you get the book of the sheikh. It's got all of his hadith that he got from his sheikh from. He's got all these in a book. Now there's like 500, 600 pages here. What are you gonna do? You're gonna borrow that book from the sheikh, and you're gonna spend about 12 hours a day writing, because you gotta hurry up and give that book back to him. He's not gonna let you borrow that forever. You understand? So that's you see the people in the past, they wrote, or if they sat with the sheikh, they wrote the hadith that he was given. They were all writers. The people of the past were writers. Nowadays, people just underline information in books and highlight. And I am against this for two main reasons. The first reason is because it destroys the book. Now, what I mean by this is like when people do this in like Fath al-Bari and books like that. You got books that you're teaching from, that you're only going to use for teaching, right? Like I have even like in this Sharia, I don't write in it. I won't write in it because I'm also going to read this. I'm not just going to teach from it. I'm going to read from it. But I got for example, Al-Adab al-Mufrad. I got 3 different copies. Well, now I got 2 different copies because I gave you one of them. Actually, we still got 3 different copies because I gave Mujahid one. So we got 3 copies of Al-Adab al-Mufrad. So I got one that I use for the class. I write in. The one that Saif has, he doesn't write in it. So khalas, if I want to read it, I'll just read his. But if it's a book that you're going to be using for reference, you do not write in this book. You don't go take Fath al-Bari and start writing in Fath al-Bari. That's what notebooks are for. You know what I'm saying? You don't destroy the book because maybe that book is not just for you. Somebody else might get the book after your death. You know what I'm saying? And then what are they going to do with all this writing and stuff that you have in the book? It's annoying. It's really, really annoying. You don't write in books like that. You want to do something like that, you write in notebooks. The only time that you should write in a book is just a book that you're teaching. And you just have notes, for when you're teaching. But other than that, you do not write in a book. All right, don't highlight in a book, don't write in a book. That's what notebooks are for. That's what notebooks have always been for, to write in notebooks. Suyuti, they said he used to fill up 11 notebooks every single day. 11 big notebooks, like that size, every single day. Be like Suyuti. Don't write in the books. That's lazy. All right, and it destroys the book. The first reason is because it destroys the book. What you think might be beneficial might not be the same for another person that reads the book. People writing lines and notes in books just destroys them. I am referring to reference books here, not books you study. For example, you would not take Fath al-Bari by Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, rahimahullah, and write notes and underline information all throughout the book. You would take a notebook and start writing out beneficial information. Imam ibn Abdul Barr narrated in his famous book, Jami' Bayan al-Ilmi wa Fadlihi, the following. حدثنا وكيع عن أكرمة ابن عمار عن يحيى ابن أبي كثير قال ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قيدوا العلم بالكتابة. So here Ibn Abbas, he said, رضي الله عنهما, he says, strengthen your knowledge. Like قيدوه, it means what? To tie it down, to keep it, to keep it from running away from you. So how do you do that? By writing it down constantly. Because when you're writing it down, you're revising it. There's nothing that's going to help your memory better than sitting there and just writing out the hadith and writing out the hadith. Even the Quran. If you're memorizing the Quran and you take it and you write it out, because you're practicing the same script that you're memorizing from. So you're making your mind is actually making out the page. And it's going through your memory to put it onto the page anyways. So that's the best way to strengthen your memory, is by writing. If you don't write a lot, then don't expect to be a strong memorizer. If you go back and you look at the Salaf and how much they used to write, and then you see how much they used to memorize, And they would be writing it, they would be memorizing it, and they'd be writing again, and they'd be memorizing it. So you have to write a lot. The word Ibn Abbas actually used means to tie something down. So he's actually telling the people that the best way to retain the knowledge is by writing it. That's to tie it down. Writing helps your memory. In fact, the Salaf would write beneficial information they heard on anything they could find until they could find something to rewrite it in. Rewrite it in. Yeah, anything. If they all they could find was a leaf on the ground and they heard some beneficial information, they would write it on that leaf. And then they would take it home and then they would rewrite it as something more formal. But they would always, like, whenever they had, even if they couldn't find anything, and that's why a student of knowledge, really, you should always have like a, at least some type of notebook with you, just to, because you never know when you're going to hear some type of information or a hadith that you never heard before, something that's very beneficial, and you don't know where you're going to hear it. And if you don't have that, what are you going to do? Just take your phone and say, message to self. All right, this is a hadith that I heard today, and just keep making voice messages all the time. No, write it down. Write it down. And get the practice of writing. All right. I actually used to see students that they used to write so much. I sat next to one student. Well, I don't know how this guy did it. He was just sitting there like a court reporter. Like, the whole time the sheikh was teaching, his hands going. He's writing down everything the sheikh's saying. And he's doing it as he's saying it. Like, you can see how fast he's writing. I'm like, dude, man, you could really, you should go work for the courts or something. What is that? The guy, what is that? That woman that sits on the typewriter typing out all the conversation? This guy's sitting there writing down word for word what the sheikh's saying as he's saying it. So these are the people that, like, they don't joke around. His notebooks are full of just every word that the sheikh said. I had one friend also, the same thing. His brother was from Pasadena. All right, in Damaj, he wanted to study Al-Kawakib. And he said the best way to study Kawakib is an explanation of Mutammimat al-Ajurumiyya. It's a book that's that big. It was 110 tapes. Or I think, no, Sheikh Abu Bilal did it, so it might have been 90 something tapes. But whatever the case, man, it's a huge lesson, right? So my friend, he said the best way that I can benefit from this is I'm going to take every single tape and I'm going to write down everything. And he literally wrote down every word for word, and it was between 90 to 110 tapes. Imagine that. 90 to 110 tapes. He wrote down word for word everything that the sheikh said. He didn't write down the fawaid, the beneficial information. He wrote down word for word everything that he said from those 90 tapes or 110 tapes or however many tapes. So those are the types of people that, serious. That's serious. And you have to write a lot. And he got really strong in Nahu, by the way. All right, so the word Ibn Abbas actually used means to tie something down. So he's actually telling people the best way to retain the knowledge is by writing it. Writing helps your memory. In fact, the Salaf would write, I already read all this, right? You should get in the habit of writing in notebooks. Whenever you are studying a subject, you should have a notebook for class and a notebook that you put all the information you obtained in an organized fashion. Because when you're writing in class, you're just writing down notes quickly. Sometimes you even have to skip words because you can't write down the whole thing. Sometimes you're not putting, obviously you can't do fa, ko, you can't do that. So you have to write quick. The sheikh's talking, he's not going to stop for you. And you can't tell him stop. If you keep doing that, then the students are going to hate you because you're holding the other students back from getting information. He's got to slow down for you. So either one, just shut up and get the information from other people. Or two, what? Just write as quick as you can and get as much as you can, and then you check with other people. You have other brothers that you study with. You sit down and say, okay, let's put our notes together. Now, once you see it, you correct it. You make all the corrections. Then you have another notebook that you take that information in, and you write it out slowly and clearly, and cleanly and in an organized fashion. And sometimes you go back and you double check the information in the other books because maybe the sheikh didn't give the right wording. And you say, well, this ain't the correct wording. So you go back in the book, you get the correct wording, and you correct it. And you write the information out correctly in a clean notebook. Everything's like organized. That's the way. So at least two notebooks. All right. All right. Whenever you're studying a subject, you should have a notebook for class and a notebook that you put all the information you obtained in an organized fashion. You memorize from your notebooks. I've never seen people memorizing from notes they wrote in books. Have you ever seen that? People write all these notes in books. Have you ever seen them memorizing the notes that they wrote in books? No. When do you memorize it? When you put it into a notebook. And then you take the notebook and you memorize from the notebook. So stop destroying books. Because you're not even going to memorize it. You're not even memorizing. I've never seen a person put notes in books and memorize from the notes that they have in books. So what's the purpose of writing there? It's just to destroy the book. All right. I have never seen people memorizing from notes that they wrote in books. We all do it, but we do not memorize from it. We all write notes in the books, but none of us memorize from it. Even the notes you write in books, which you should not do, you will end up writing those notes in a notebook if they are important. So just do that from the beginning. Get in the habit of writing out the Quran to practice writing the Uthmani script. And get in the practice of writing hadith, because this is a tradition of our deen. That is why I advise students in the early stages to write out hadiths they love the most in a notebook and memorize those hadiths first. Yeah, that's what you should do. That's what this was. This was hadiths that I wrote out. I have them written out in a notebook at home. And then I published it. Published it for the people. But you should practice just writing out a hadith, and try to write it out from your memory. Like read the hadith and try to write out as much as you can from memory. And write out the Quran, because the Quran, the script is different. When we say amanu, how do we write it? We write it with an alif and the med on top, the meme, noon, waw, and the alif, right? But when you see it in the Quran, it's written with a hamza, an alif, meme, noon, waw, it's alif, so it's written differently. All right, so you have to look at that and you practice writing the Uthmani script, because the Uthmani script was written for a purpose. And that's why it's not written like the same writing that we use in a day-to-day Arabic language, because the Uthmani script was written in a way that you could read all 7 qira'at in one mushaf. So that's why it's written the way it is. So you could take every single qira'ah and you could read it from that one mushaf. You understand? Once you understand the qawa'id, like what the changes are, the madud and the tajweed. So there's a purpose for that. And that's why it's written differently. So you have to practice writing it so you could, get that in your mind. All right, he said after this, start with, all right, so you can write out as many hadiths as you want. Start with 50. Once you have memorized those, add another 50. Every time you come across a hadith that really hits you, write it in your notebook. Keep a separate notebook for statements of the Salaf. Don't mix the two up. Have one notebook for hadiths, one notebook for just statements of the Salaf. Maybe these could be statements that deal with the issues of Aqidah, statements in fiqh, whatever. But don't mix the two together, because then you start to get confused whether or not something's a hadith or not. So don't do that. All right, now keep a separate notebook for statements of the Salaf. Every time you read a statement of the Salaf you really vibe with, write it in your notebook and memorize it. You can write statements of the Salaf, or even sometimes poetry of the Salaf, such as Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, who has beautiful advice in poetic form. I knew one brother, here's the story of the brother right here. I knew one brother in Damaj that was studying Nahu. That's the brother from Pasadena. He wanted to get stronger in Nahu, so he went out and bought the explanation of Mutammimat al-Ajrumiyya by Sheikh Habibullah al-Hadrami. He bought tapes because this was back in the old days. I believe there were over 100 tapes, if I'm not mistaken, or close to that. It's close to it at least. He sat down for 1 year and wrote out the entire explanation of every single tape. Every word. That is dedication. Most Muslims growing up in the 90s are aware of the story of Malcolm X in prison, in which he wrote out the entire dictionary to improve his reading, writing, and speaking skills. We have a lot of stories like that from Yemen. Writing is also a good measure of how strong your memory is. You can test your memory by writing out Quran that you have memorized and that you have memorized. That you have memorized, or writing out hadiths that you memorize. That you memorize. Now, once you are finished, you open up the mushaf and check what you have written, or you open up the book of hadith and check your writing. And the same thing, you could play like al-Husri, play it for like 3 seconds, stop it, write out what he said. But write it out in the exact same script that you find in the mushaf. And then open up the mushaf and check it. See if it's the same, see if it matches up. Which fee? Huh? All right, once you are finished, you open up the mushaf and check what you have written, or you open up the book of hadith and check your writing. The more you test yourself like this, the stronger you will get, inshallah. To conclude, do not become lazy with writing and think that because we have technology, I'm just going to write everything on my computer or type everything, whatever. If that is your attitude, you probably will not teach a high level of knowledge. Ask any of the old school ulama how much they used to write while they were studying, and you will see what you need to do. Yeah, go ask Sheikh Salih Fawzan. Go talk to all those old school ulama and see how much they used to write. And and then look at their level of knowledge in the past and look at the people's level of these up and coming shuyukh and look at their level of knowledge now. It's a big difference, big difference. So this is something that should not be neglected at all. So reading should not be neglected. None of these 5 elements should be neglected. So we already covered 2, reading and writing. But none of these 5 elements should be neglected. Wallahu musta'an wa ilahuna subhanaka wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
أحمدنا
Stop.